I'm trying to get harder and tougher mentally and physically every day of my life.
You're either the growth mindset or you're the fixed mindset.
If you're trying to be the best, you need to look at who the best is and see what they do.
Relentless pursuit of progress.
There's a difference between the best and the rest.
Welcome to the Brute Strength Podcast.
Champions are built in the mind first.
Where we interview scientists, world champions, doctors, and experts in just about every area of health and fitness.
What do you care enough about? What are you fascinated enough about to go so deep and learn so much that you'll know more about it than anyone else?
And now, here's your host, Michael Caju.
Hey, and welcome back to the Brute Strength Podcast. This is Michael Caju. I'm your host, and today I'm talking to Michael Gervais. Michael is one of my favorite people on the planet to talk to, and this is our third episode together. Michael is a high-performance psychologist, and he works currently with the Seattle Seahawks. He's worked with dozens of world record holders, Olympians, internationally acclaimed artists and musicians, and MVPs from about every major sport, including... well, this is not a sport, but he also works with some of the highest level executives in the world, working with Fortune 100 CEOs. He is a recognized speaker. He's been on NBC, ABC, Fox, CNN, you name it, he's been on it. He is also the co-founder of a company called Compete to Create that he founded with the Seattle Seahawks coach, Pete Carroll, where they work primarily, well, they started working with huge enterprises. So like the biggest companies in the world, they would go in and work on culture and leadership. Some of their clients are Microsoft, AT&T, Amazon, etc. And he's also the host of one of my favorite podcasts called the Finding Mastery Podcast, where he gets a lot of the most successful people on the planet onto his show. And it's a mixture of just a natural conversation, and sometimes it sounds almost like a therapy session where he's using his knowledge of psychology and specifically performance psychology and really taking a peek under the lid and seeing how they develop the mindset and behaviors that they have. And it's just absolute mastery. The way that he picks people apart is masterful. And that's the Finding Mastery podcast. So today we start out talking about his thoughts on Kobe's passing. I thought it was a really interesting perspective to hear, for a real quick example. I am not a huge basketball fan, but for some reason, Kobe's passing impacted me greater than the passing of any famous person ever. And we talked about why that might be. I saw quite a bit of that in people around me and on social media. And we just talked about what was going on psychologically in me and in the culture. And he just gave me his thoughts on that. And I thought it was really interesting. We talk a lot about knowing yourself, and he lays down a few steps to how you come to know yourself better and the importance of that. And one thing that really stuck with me, I think from the first episode we did together, was that he said primarily what he's trying to teach people, these super high performers, is A, to know themselves, and then B, to be able to maintain and be themselves in the highest pressure situations. So we talk about how you do that. We talk about one of his favorite questions, which is, what would your friends say you are best at, and how would they say it? And we talk about some different questions like that and why it's important to have an understanding of how you're perceived by others. We discuss feedback systems and how you create them, the importance of identifying where patterns began in your behavior and your thoughts. We talk about something that he calls epic thoughts, which is a form of language training. Then we talk about what he's doing at Compete to Create, how CEOs of Fortune 100 companies think differently from the rest of us. And what I found to be a really interesting part of the discussion was when looking at a lot of us look up to the top 0.01% in whatever discipline or area of life that we're most interested in. And we talked about the impact of trying to emulate these people and how it can actually be a detriment to some of us. And then we talked about what he's doing with Pete Carroll, working with some of these enormous organizations, but also what they're creating to help all of us regular people to train our minds. This was an absolutely incredible podcast, and I hope you enjoy it. So please help me welcome Michael Gervais. This episode is brought to you by WAG. My wife, Adi, started the company about 5 years ago, and 2 years ago, I joined her to help her lead the company full-time. What we do at WAG is one-on-one nutrition coaching. That's what we specialize in. We also recently started to train other nutrition coaches and to help them start their own online nutrition businesses. If you're interested in being coached by us, you can use the code BRUTE50, that's BRUTE 50 at checkout, and you can get 50% off of your first month of membership. What I love about what we do, number one is, and this is something I really admire about Adi, is that our number one value is client transformation. And I've seen her make the decision over and over and over again to improve the service versus do something that just makes her more money. And I just really, really respect that. There's such an emphasis on making sure that this remains a world-class service and that people are actually getting amazing results. And I think that's very well represented in the percentage of amazing feedback that we get, as well as the number of testimonials of people that have had just massive transformations on our website. What I love about nutrition coaching, and the thing that people rave about most, is the accountability aspect. There's something called the Hawthorne effect, where there was a study done, and I learned this from one of my mentors named Eben. There was this study done in a factory where they told the employees that someone was going to come in and just change the lights or look at the lights. And what happened was the employees' performance went way, way up. And what they found is that by simply having someone observe what we're doing, or thinking they're observing what we're doing, makes our performance go up. So just the fact that you have someone to be accountable to check in with, immediately makes your food decisions and your performance in your nutrition go up. It allows you to reach your goals faster than any other thing you could possibly do in your nutrition. Other things that we offer are education. When you sign up, you get access to a huge knowledge base. It's just a big download into your brain of our philosophy on nutrition. We have a ton of videos and emails that you'll receive for free when you sign up, and your education, your knowledge of nutrition will just skyrocket. You get access to a community, a really supportive and engaged Facebook community. There are a couple thousand people in there, and when you ask a question, when you ask for support, you will immediately get a shitload of responses. You'll also probably get a lot of likes, which feels good. The results, I think, speak for themselves. Again, we have something like 700 testimonials of people that have gotten unbelievable results on our website, and you can just scroll through those and find someone that's similar to you. So how it works is you sign up with us, you fill out a questionnaire. That questionnaire is then used to pair you with the best coach for you. That coach will then send you a custom nutrition plan, and then you'll go out into your life and you'll try to follow the plan. And as you encounter obstacles and challenges, you will report back to your coach, and your coach will help you strategize getting through those specific obstacles and challenges. You get a weekly check-in, as well as unlimited messaging through an app that we created called Seismic. So if you're interested in being coached by us, you can use the code BRUTE50, BRUTE 50 at checkout. You can go to workingagainstgravity.com and use that code. Also, if you want to become a nutrition coach and quote unquote join the digital workforce, join the online workforce, then you can join our wait list right now at workingagainstgravity.com and click on the coach certification button. All right, let's get into this episode. Michael, welcome back, man.
Great to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, it's such a pleasure to be sitting virtually across from you again, man. You're one of my favorite people to talk to. So today,
wow, that's a fun way to start. Thank you. And I'll just start by returning that sentiment. Is that I am fortunate to be able to talk as often as I can about the stuff that I've dedicated my life effort to try to understand. And I know we'll get into that, but I've really liked our first conversation. So it's a testament to I'm looking forward to this, hopefully as much as you are. So thank you.
Hell yeah, man. So a lot of this will be a continuation of what we've talked about in the past. And the most common theme that we've talked about in our past couple episodes has been something around knowing yourself. You have it's an either 2 or 3 part process that you try to teach athletes and high performers, which is something like, and please expand on this. Something like the first objective is to know yourself deeply. And then once you know yourself, and only once you know yourself, can you maintain and be yourself in high pressure situations. And that's what we're truly after. We're trying to be ourselves as much as possible in the highest pressure situations. Did I miss anything in there?
No, I think it'd be good to go upstream for a moment. And the way that I come into this conversation is through the science of high performance psychology, or the science of psychology, licensed as a psychologist, and then an emphasis in sport and performance with a sub-understanding, subspecialty, if there was such a thing, of the psychology of consequential environments. And if you think about what you just said, matched with where I've spent a lot of my time, both on the science and in the trenches with in some of the most hostile environments in the world, that it's not necessarily about can I be myself in hostile environments, but that becomes a proving ground to yourself, not to others. But it's one thing to say, let's go, I'm a compassionate human, or I'm a lover, or, I've got great skill, fill in the blank, whatever the craft is. And then as soon as there's real or perceived danger in the environment, and we can have fun with that difference between real and perceived. As soon as there's danger in the environment, are you able to artistically still be that same human that you set out to be? And that is the litmus test for if you're full of shit or not. Mm. And, I think about my arc, and as a human, that I got into the field because I wanted to understand better what I think is the most captivating and complicated and beautiful science. And I know I'm biased, right? Like when I say that, but psychology is beautiful. It is difficult to get our arms around what is this invisible world that we know matters deeply, whether it's at the world stage for athletics and performance, or it's intimate moments with our loved ones. It is our mind that is the principal driver and the principal filter. And how does our mind engage with, and it's a top down and a bottom up, how does it engage with our brain and the rest of our body? And it's beautiful, it's complicated. I think it's a wonderful, meaningful approach to life, is to try to understand what it means to reimagine the human experience. And so that is, if we go upstream, that's what I'm trying to sort out. And pressured and dangerous and risk environments or consequence environments are a litmus test to see where you are with your ability to be you.
Beautiful. So we're gonna dive further into how one knows themselves. I want to talk about some personal stuff. I also want to talk about what you're doing with business owners and high performing entrepreneurs in your Compete to Create company. Somewhere that I would like to start, though, is something like really timely, and that is the passing away of Kobe Bryant. You work with a number of professional athletes, and so you're super close to a lot of these people that might have had, you may have even had a personal relationship with him. From your perspective, how did that feel to you, and how has that impacted people around you?
Yeah, like one of the things that, as a practicing psychologist, is that it's off bounds to talk about who I work with, who I don't work with, all of that stuff, and who I know and don't know. And I just say that because I did not have a personal nor professional, obviously, relationship with Kobe. So just like you and others, is that I was a participant in the experience. And it's a very complicated thing. I know I've used that word twice now, but the human experience is multidimensional and multifaceted. And what was complicated about the Kobe and his daughter Gigi and the other survivors, the family members of that crash, including the pilot, is that very few people actually intimately knew the people on the plane. Now, when there is a funeral that takes place, let's say 20, 40, 200, 400 people show up, depending on their circle of friends and family. This impacted thousands upon thousands of people that actually materially did not know Kobe and did not know Gigi and did not know the pilot and so on. So why is it complicated? Because it's considered complicated grief. What people are grieving, what we're grieving is an emblem. We're grieving a representation of what it means to be fill in the blank. And Kobe represented a lot of things to a lot of people. And so, and certainly, be lost on us if we didn't include the word of excellence, right, into what he stood for, both pre and post career. So, or pre, during, and post. And so, I think what people are grieving is like this two parts. One is they're grieving the emblem of excellence, like they don't get to see it anymore, so they have to refigure their relationship with the emblem, their emblem of excellence. And the second is it's a reminder of the fragility of life. And the fragility of life is one of the core tenets for most world religions. And the reason I bring up the 11 world religions is because they've done an incredible job, like it or not, but they are the shapers of culture, global culture. And all of the 11 world religions remind us about how fragile life is by trying to create varied narratives about what happens post-life, post-physical life. Some say you shoot off. Zoroastrianism, first world religion, says you shoot off into become a star. Not a star like Kobe, but like a star, like in the universe. And then Christianity says you go to heaven, potentially. Fill in the blanks. There's lots of different ways. Reincarnation is one of the traditions as well for many of the religions. That being said, for thousands of years, we've been trying to sort out what is the purpose of life, what am I doing, and what happens next. And that, let's call it big questions in life, are being forced onto people right now when an emblem of excellence and all things that are related to high performance as a human has been stripped away. And so it's about fragility of life, and it's about a death of an emblem. And for some people, it's the death of somebody that they knew dearly and they loved dearly. So it's complicated because it's holding one or all three of those variables at play.
I felt more impacted by this than the passing away of any other famous person in history, and I wasn't even a basketball fan at all. Part of me felt a little silly about feeling that way. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it's healthy to talk about like your experience, whatever it is. There's no prescribed right way for grief, and so. We used to think that there's 5 stages of grief, which I'm sure you and your listeners are familiar with. It's not quite that crisp and clean. And so what you're talking about, the silliness, is that there is a confusion to grief. And the silliness is like, hey, I didn't know him, but it impacted me. Why do I feel the way I feel? And I think it maps up to probably 2 of the other things that we just talked about. Is one, he meant something to you. So you're losing the relationship with that concept. But it actually wasn't him. He just represented the concept to you. So you have a relationship with the concept that he stood for. So you think, he had a private life that we didn't know about. And it begs the question, if we double click under there a little bit, like, who are you and who am I and who are the ones that we love? Like, to really get to know them is a calling for depth. And the silliness that you're wrestling with, and this is me riffing right now with you, is the silliness is like, hey, I had a surface relationship and I'm feeling deeply. That doesn't seem like that's how it's supposed to go. so I would replace silliness with confusion and, kind of work from that place. Like, why am I confused about how I feel?
Yeah, very interesting. What came up as you were talking is just me thinking about a lot of people's relationship with Jesus Christ or another symbol or emblem, to use your words. They've never met this person that may or may not have ever existed, but it represents something so meaningful to them that if they just contemplate the suffering that individual allegedly went through, it can bring them to tears. Super interesting.
That's exactly right. And there's depth to what we're talking about right here. This is not to be, for me, I don't want to come across as this is an intellectual exercise. This is the human experience. Mm-hmm. Like, how do we deal with loss? And this is why Buddhism and Christianity will both kind of rattle the saber by saying, hey, listen, this stuff is all temporary now. There's something else happening. And, in the Buddhist traditions, and I'll oversimplify a beautiful tradition, is that, hey, this moment is fleeting. And so the impermanence of all things is really important to get a hold of. And so, get in touch with the impermanence of everything as a way to change your relationship with suffering. Mm. And so, and it's one of the core tenets is that all people are suffering. And so grief is certainly hard. And so is living with love. Both are challenging, and both require vulnerabilities. And so we're in it right now. And it'll be interesting to see how how it changes people's relationship with the fragility of life.
Mm-hmm. So shifting gears a little bit, and to use one of your own questions on you, what would your best friends say that you are best at, and how would they say it?
Come on, man. Okay, so shifting gears, how would my best friend, one of my best friends, describe me?
Yep.
Is that was the first part?
Yep.
Yeah. I love I love that question because it depends on the person that I call up. And so I would love the answer to be, I am consistently Mike, and let me describe how I think any person that might meet me might describe myself or describe me to you. However, I have different relationships with different people, and I'm still the core human. But when I think about some of my knucklehead friends from high school, they're going to tell you something else. They're going to tell you one thing. If I think about one of my dear friends, he's got a different dimension that he would share. And if I talk about my work colleagues, and if I talk about like what my wife would think, which is my true best friend, like she'd have a very different. So it forces me to double click to say, who do I want to think about? And so I'll think about my wife right now, is that she would say, she'd be flattering and say some things like integrity leads, purity of concept match with behavior, which is integrity. She would say that I've got a really curious, insatiable curiosity about how things work. Hardworking, grew up on the farm, kind of figured that shit out at a young age, that hard work is required and it's actually part of the joy of things. And then she'd also say, you worry about shit too much. She would say, kind of some unsettled relationships that you've had with parents and otherwise are still working at you. And she would say that, Mike, I'm not going to talk about you in front of other people, so I'm going to stop talking now. So like she'd honor the sanctity of the relationship. But so she'd start with some gloss, and then she'd also say that, hey, listen, dude's human, trying to figure it out, and we're all kind of trying to figure it out.
I want to touch on a couple of things you said there. Integrity, where does that come from? Who did you learn that from?
That comes from, for me, early mentors, and my parents are my early mentors, and so we grew up on a farm. They kind of dropped out of the quote unquote rat race. I wouldn't say it was just, it's a farm, it's a working farm. We had money, I guess. I never kind of went without, but I didn't have new stuff. And we didn't have running water during the winter months, because pipes would freeze, and we had to chop wood to heat our home with a wood burning thing. And, it was hard. It's a farm. And it wasn't like a working farm. I'm sorry. It wasn't like a I don't know, some sort of, you can think about a farm in a way that like it's got beautiful barns and like all the great tools, and like our shit was rusted and we're just figuring it out, back to that. So integrity came from them. They have high moral standards and a loving approach to wanting to see people flourish. And so integrity was a big part of our life growing up.
I should have started here. What does integrity mean to you?
Oh yeah. So honoring, it's the connection between what you say and what you do. And then you double click under that. So matching what you say with what you do is integrity. And then double clicking under that from a character perspective would be matching those two things aligned with your core values, even when there's others that are not observing. So it's matching those two, what you say and what you do, and then having those aligned with core values, even when it's difficult to do those.
I was talking to a group of friends last night about the concept of building integrity. And the first question was, can it be built? And everybody agreed that yes, it can be built and trained in an adult. How do you think it can be built or developed?
It starts with identifying some clarity, having clarity and identifying the core values. And so once let's say pick 3, 4, 5 core values. And these are not core values that you think that others will approve of you. This is what I want to stand for from a value perspective, like these are the ones.
And those are things that you have a deep desire to uphold, or do you look at your actions and say, based on my actions and behavior, this is what I value?
It's authentically aspirational.
Okay.
Right? Like let's just pick one. Honesty. Okay. Are you always honest, Michael? Like,
I'm
no,
not.
like, right. But let's say that's a big time one for you. Then, okay. Then integrity is about lining up thoughts and actions to that core value, even when it's difficult. And it's aspirationally so because it's a real commitment to have that be so finely tuned that it's in pitch. And that would be the way to think about how this works. So yes, clarity first of the virtues, the values, and then the training is, we can unfold that if you want, but the training is daily practicing both with language and behaviors, how to match up against those core values. And then it goes back to our first thought, which is, can you be about those core values and express whatever skill that you're working on in hostile, rugged environments? That's what tests you. Like that, and that creates the flywheel for growth. Is like you start in a calm environment, moderate stress environment, high stress, then rugged and hostile environments. And there's a flywheel feedback loop that when you're struggling, whether it's core values or said skill, basketball, shooting or pitching in boardrooms or fill in the blank, that flywheel feedback is meant to provide real information back to how you're doing. And I will say that we're in a rich environment for feedback loops from a technological standpoint, but the greatest feedback loop is the human. Your mind, your brain, your physiological system, when you're awake to it and aware of it, and you're finely tuned with what your body is sensing and experiencing, it's a great feedback mechanism. The second best is people of wisdom that have been down the path, that are right there with you, see you, understand you, know what quote unquote great looks like, and then can feedback from there. And then technology, that's how I stack rank them.
Got it.
Feedback loops.
So step 1, write down core values, say 5 core values. One thing that stood out to me is, I don't think I've ever heard this, is integrity having to do with thoughts, actions, and words lining up. I've never heard the thoughts piece. Can you say more about that?
Yeah. Well, this is a philosophical approach to what I'm saying, but there's also some science to this. Okay, so behaviorism, as a branch of psychology, would argue, and they take the position, that thoughts are behaviors. And I'm not dropping myself into the behaviorist camp. What I'm suggesting, though, is that thoughts and behaviors are materially important. Words are also materially important. So lining up thoughts, words, and actions is the mark of somebody who has alignment. And call it integrity is what we're talking about here. That is what integrous feels and looks like when thoughts, words, and actions line up. So thoughts, it's the whole field of psychology, really. Do thoughts come from, hold on, before I answer it, where do thoughts, Michael, where do thoughts come from? How about that question back to you?
I think lots of different places, past conditioning from parents, society, past experiences that we've had, the ether.
Yeah. So
source.
There's a framework, right, that you're working on. Like you're saying, past experiences, family, whatnot, experiences, and that builds a psychological framework. And that framework is both a filter and a projector of experiences. And so let's say somebody walks by you and they're wearing a perfume that is the exact same perfume from a woman in your past, okay, that wore that perfume. And maybe let's just extend it and say that you had a difficult relationship with this woman, okay? Or we could say that you had a great relationship with this woman. But the psychological framework is going to be a filter and a projector for that new stimulus, which is that smell of perfume. And if you have an unsophisticated, an unexamined, a version 1 framework, right, is that, let's say that woman and you had great pain in your relationships, that there's a trigger, bang, and you project it now onto the new woman, or it has nothing to do with your history, or you all of a sudden you feel agitated and irritated and you're not sure why. And so with a sophisticated, upgraded psychological framework, that perfume goes by, you smell it, and you go to a place of more alignment with the core values like love or curiosity, or I remember when I learned so much, and look at this person made that similar choice. That's really interesting. And wow, my old version of myself would have responded this way. And now this upgraded way of living, I've got more freedom and more space, and, I've got more joy in my life. So it's a projector and a filter for interpreting and influencing events in our life. So it's a long-winded way of saying some shit that our thoughts are really important.
Yes.
They dictate so much in our life.
Love it. Step 1, write down core values. Step 2, create feedback loops. So let's dive further into ourselves being the best feedback loop. How is that done?
Well, it requires some refinement, and this is an analogy that we can play maybe in a lot of ways throughout this conversation, but as we're born, we're pretty finely tuned. Like, it's an amazing little ecosystem that's thriving. And then as we get older, you start to lose touch. Our adolescent years, I'm not so sure how finely tuned we are. There's lots of stuff going on. Hormonally, we're kind of out of whack. Literally, parts of our brain are changing and growing and not quite formed yet. Prefrontal cortex doesn't come online till the age of 25-ish. And, that's the part of the brain that's responsible for judgment and thinking, executive functioning. And we don't even really know where our fingertips are because we're growing so fast in adolescence age. So the system is growing at a rate that it's hard to be finely tuned. And as we get older, let's call it your age, my age, there's an opportunity for an upgrade to become more attuned to thoughts, words, and actions, responses that we have to events and whatnot. And then potentially we start to get into that, those concepts of wisdom and being an elder. And an elder and someone of wisdom is somebody who is finely tuned, and they are an instrument. And hopefully they're an instrument that's related to their core principles, their values and the principles that matter most to them. And they become not only a beacon, but a tuning fork for, let's call it truth. Let's call it whatever. You fill it in, right? And so your deeper question is like, how do we do that?
Can I ask you something about that before you move on?
Oh, yeah.
About tuning fork. Does that mean that a wise person becomes something on which we can tune ourselves with? Right? Mm-hmm. We can, like, we're following their lead. We're using their fine tuning to tune ourselves further. Yeah.
So I don't know if you're fortunate enough to know wise men wise woman and have a relationship with them. But oftentimes what happens is we go to that person and we would say, hey, I want to run something by you that's confusing or challenging, that I'm trying to sort out or that I'm stuck with or stuck on. And they've got, let's say they're more finely tuned, right? That like they're more pure in the depth and understanding and ability to express than you are at this moment. So you can attune to them, but they become a tuning fork. They are their own independent tuning fork that you can vibe off of, literally using that word. And at some point, your responsibility as a human is to be your own tuning fork.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I don't want to stand on a soapbox here. Okay, that's the last thing I'm going to do. But like, if we're drunk and we're drugged and we're distracted and fill in the blanks, the tuning fork is off.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you know what it's like to have X number of drinks on the system. The tuning fork's off. It doesn't mean it's wrong. It just means the tuning fork is off. And then a binge drink, drop into some science, takes like cognitively 72 hours to kind of come back online.
Mm-hmm.
That's a long time to, be off tune, if you will. So I hope I answered your question there a little bit.
You may have. I'm wondering, are there any practices, habits, systems that people can put into place to start creating their own feedback loop, to start asking themselves? So let's say they write down these things. They write down honesty, for instance, and they want to continue to check on themselves to make sure, or just to see how they're lining up with that value. How do they check in on that? I
So you're a systems thinker. I didn't realize that in our last conversation, which is cool. That's probably what I like to think in systems as well. And so there's at least 3 ways that I'm familiar with for enhancing that tuning fork. Mindfulness, because that increases awareness and potentially wisdom. So mindfulness is a practice, and we can double click on that as much as you'd like there. Conversations with people of wisdom, and writing. So you mentioned journaling, right? And so it's a way to externalize thoughts. It's a way to, it's a forcing function to be honest. Because if you're feeling something, let's say frustrated, strike that. If you're feeling rage and you're journaling and you're saying, I'm just kind of frustrated, you flat out know that you're trying to say something that isn't real, and so that becomes a tuning fork mechanism as well. So those are the 3 that I found to be incredibly valuable. Mindfulness, which is really awareness and wisdom building, relationships with people of wisdom, tuning fork thing that we talked about, and the 3rd is writing.
Another thing you talked about in feedback loops is having other people around you that can reflect for you. What's the best way for people to approach or create a good environment, a good network of people that feel safe enough to give them constructive feedback or even positive feedback?
Sometimes I appreciate the value of psychological safety and creating that space for feedback. There's the greatest coaches have demonstrated, and let me strike this, because there are people who win. There's lots of ways to get to winning. And when I say the greatest coaches, I'm talking about the ones where athletes or other people revere that coach for something far greater than the X's and O's in the winning column. But there's something deeper that they've also translated. Is those coaches, what they say about their coach is that they just got me, and they challenge the shit out of me. So that is support first, then challenge. Okay, not the other way around. It's not challenge, and then try to figure out this message as support. It's support first. So how do you support somebody? Is you get to know them, their ambitions, their blind spots, their cravings, their deepest drives and motivations, the things that drive them crazy, the things that put them in positions of, efficacy, self-power, and confidence, and fill in the blanks. So support, then challenge. And that does create first this psychological safety. And then you can kind of nudge and push and pull and challenge and stand up in front of people like, there's more in you. This isn't good enough. This is not what we agreed to.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, you want to recalibrate the vision, Joey or Jane? And it's like, no. Okay, well, I'm just telling you now, this isn't good enough. Here's what we agreed on. Here's what we're trying to do. And for some reason, you just keep doing the old thing.
Mm-hmm.
So let's break it down this way. And, and like, there's some sort of mechanism. I'm butchering the art of coaching in the, 20-second narrative there, but, support then challenge is one of those ways to do that.
That's great. So let's talk about a break in integrity. So one example that I have is something just came up recently that I asked my wife. I wanted to make a financial investment for our business, and I was really excited about it. And she shot me down. And what I noticed was it had a very significant, what the story I told myself was it was an overly significant impact on me physically, like just tension in my body, and I was kind of sullen, and I felt like I was kind of pouting. And I just sat with that for a good 24 hours. And then I had this vision of being maybe 7 or 8 years old, and I was driving with my dad. And I don't know what it was that I wanted that he didn't let me have, but I saw myself pouting. And I just saw all of these images or videos in my head of me pouting as a kid and trying to use it as a way to manipulate them. And so I'm curious. So this is all going on for me currently. So this is a little bit selfish, but I think a lot of people can relate to this. One of my core values is responsibility or accountability and just taking ownership of my shit. I think that financial investment would not have been a good choice. And so I'm a little bit off there. My question is, what's the importance of going back and finding the root cause of different patterns? A lot of therapists and psychologists talk about, where did that come from? Who did you learn that from? Things like that.
Cool. So let's go root cause, and let's go pattern recognition, and let's go upgrade, kind of in that order.
Mm-hmm.
So root cause there's some importance to that. And if we spend all our time trying to get to the root cause, we might spend a lifetime,
mm-hmm.
Getting to it. And so there's a value if somebody can get to a root cause to understand what it is. That is driving their patterns, their automatic patterns sometimes. And put a pin in that for a minute, and I'll come back to it. The second is pattern recognition, because what you did is you said, oh, there's a pattern here.
Mm-hmm.
Hold on. This is no longer serving me. As a 7-year-old, I think it might have. And I tried it for a long time. Holy moly, I didn't realize that 20 years have gone by. When I feel like I don't have all of the say in something, my response at the lowest version of me is to pout,
mm-hmm.
because then what I'm doing is I'm tugging on people's heart a little bit. And like the whimper is to make oneself look weak, and the weak is to make another person feel like they're going to come get you or take care of you in a positive way. It's like, wow, look at my 7-year-old had this really cool strategy. I'm not sure I want to do it anymore. And that leads to this conversation of optimize or upgrade,
mm-hmm.
right? And so the upgrade is like, well, how do I want to do it? How do I want to respond when I feel small, or I feel like I don't have the power to, really do what I think I wanted to do, and fill in the blanks.
Mm-hmm.
And so all three matter. And this is the advantage, I think, that sport and performance psychology has added to the science, is that, yes, if we can get into some root cause stuff, it'll help us understand some of the core injuries that have created a maladaptive response. What at one time was a good response. And Michael, use the physical training corollary for a minute. We spend good amount of time now in physical training to understand where some systems are compromised. And nobody in physical training would say, hey, we should load something that is inefficient. Somebody's got a weak hip, whatever. We should put a barbell on their back and load it and see until it breaks. It's old. That's like 1960, 1970 or something, And so maybe 80s, I don't know, But the same true is psychologically. So if we go examine that, great. Now what do we do with it though? And what I would say is that without the examination, you have every seed of suffering as a man. You have all of them. And if you're not familiar with your automatic responses or your patterns that trigger that, then they're probably going to keep returning as a response, a lower version, a version 3.0 of you, or 4.0. You're trying to get to 5.0, 6.0, 10.0 at some point. And with that, this is where sports psychology is really fun, is that without the other piece of it, which is like, how do I want to be? Then we can use that stuff for some imagery. We can use that as guideposts. We can use that as part of the tuning fork. We can share that how with others. They can be a response mechanism back to us, like, hey, you said you want to do it this way. What's up? But that requires incredible vulnerability. It requires trusted spaces with people, and awareness of one's own inner experience. And so I hope that gets to maybe double click.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely, man. Thank you for reminding me of the concept of choosing how I do want to be rather than how I don't want to be. So after I get off of here, I'm going to decide how I want to respond in those situations. And I'm going to go and express that to my wife so she can be that mirror for me and let me know when I'm not in line with my values, so I can be a man of higher integrity.
There you go. And, that response doesn't mean that you're going to be Superman. Right. It might be the version 5.0 for you, so to speak, is I want to pause for a minute. I want to feel the feeling, and then I just want to share what I'm feeling. Brilliant right there. It's not like you have to manifest this thing, like puff your chest out and you're strong from this point forward. It might just be like, I'm going to start with curiosity. I'm going to be more curious.
Yeah, it's so funny you say that, because I did want to like swing the pendulum all the way, right? And just be like super chipper and just almost happy about it, and so super curious. And I kind of think about it like if someone has a sex addiction or something like that, right? Our deepest sex is like our most deep-seated instinctual behavior. Our drive. It's like saying, okay, I'm just not going to have sex. I want to get rid of the desire to have sex altogether, which is an extreme, example, but that's what came up.
Yeah. So, and unless you took this informed vow that is the way you're going to live your life, which Buddhist monks and many, Christian folks would have made that same vow, and it's like informed and you understand it and there's a reason for it and you want to embrace that thing rather than some shame-based, uninformed approach to life. So, again, multidimensional, multifaceted experiences that we have.
Let's talk about epic thoughts again. We talked about this on our last episode, and first, just describe that again for me.
Okay, so epic thoughts are the thoughts that, I'm revealing my origin roots. From early days, I went from a farm to Southern California, and epic is squarely into the language that I grew up with. And so an epic thought is a thought that really works for you. It just works. It puts you in a frame where you feel big and open and pure and efficacious and confident, and like it just puts you into that frame. And that's an epic thought. And nobody can give you an epic thought, right? It has to be yours, and it has to work for you, and it has to also be based in some credibility. And so an epic thought is like the mechanical part of confidence building. And we know that the research and fake it till you make it did not hold up properly. And of course it's not going to, because it's about that, even that first word in that tagline is about being phony. So epic thought is like the opposite of that. It's like what really works and what statements have you earned the right to say, that whether you're about to get, kicked in the teeth, or you just got kicked in the teeth, like that you have still earned the right to say that. And so for me, I can share some of mine, but they won't have any material meaning to you.
Mm-hmm.
Like they have to come from you. And when you say it and you double click underneath of it, we ask people to, list at least 3 things that give you the right to say that epic thought. And those 3 things are the substrate of credibility. Those 3 things you've actually experienced in your life.
Mm-hmm.
And it gives you the right to say that epic thought.
So the way that you described it last time, you said something about find like 1 to 3 things that you've done in your life that were like your biggest accomplishments, where you felt on fire. Maybe you felt like you were in a flow state. So are those 3 things that you just talked about that justify the epic thoughts? Are those the same things?
Same things. Yeah.
Okay.
So that's like the back it up approach. So
Okay.
if I'm going to say, that I'm tough. Let's just say this is not one, I'm making this up. This is actually how I learned this. I'll tell you a story actually, instead of shorthanding it. Is I was working with a cage fighter, and this was probably, it was a championship fight in the UFC. This was probably about 18 years ago. And I'm in a small little office, as I'm just kind of getting in the field. And we're doing some really good work. And he's really good. It's a championship fight that's coming up for him in the UFC. And he said something. I said, "What is it like to be your best?" And he said, "I'm a tough MFer." He didn't say MFer. He used the words. I said, "Okay. What gives you the right to say that?" And so there's no science here at this point, other than like this general theoretical approach that statements that are born out of from a credible standpoint hold up better.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, "What gives you the right to say that?" And he says, "I whooped my dad's ass when I was 14. I'm a tough motherfucker." So I said, "Okay." I stay kind of neutral in my language, and I say, "Can you back it up again?" He says, "Yeah." Okay. So in high school, on my first fight, it was 3 against 1, and I finished that fucking thing, and it took a long time. I'm a tough motherfucker, dude. I said, "Can you back it up again?" And he looked at me like he was ready and like to go. And he looked at me and says, "If someone were to ask me one more question, I just might choke them out. I'm a tough motherfucker now." so I was like, "All right, good." So that was the origin of this approach. And there's good science to back it up and support it. And so, for every epic statement you're going to write to yourself, be able to back it up.
So what is this used for? Can you hear me?
I can, yeah.
Yeah. So how can people use this?
Oh, yeah. So mental training, just like physical training. And again, I spent way too much time inside of books and academic degree granting programs and the trenches to take the science of this thing lightly. But the science is really crisp here, is that just like physical training, we can front load our training mentally. So mental training, that's sets and reps. There's 2 parts of psychology. Let me go upstream really quickly. There is sets and reps, training, and there's discovery.
Mm-hmm.
There's insight work. There is the practices to become more aware, pattern recognition and whatnot. Sets and reps and discovery. And if we're talking about sets and reps right now, to your question, it's very mechanical. It is literally sets and reps. And in this case, you would just pull out a pen and paper. You'd write down your epic thoughts, the ones that really work to put you in the right vibe. You got to be honest. You got to be real with it. It has to work for you. Just like the values. It's not like just thinking about what are the values I think would be good. It's like, am I going to commit my life efforts to this concept, to this principle, right? So, and it's same thing with this epic thought list. Is like, is this epic thought real? And then, so you write it down. I'm a tough MFer. And then spring from that 3 reasons that give you the right to own that statement. And I say own it, like full integrity, alignment, that statement is a real statement, independent of what condition that you're ever going to find yourself in.
Mm-hmm.
If you earn the right to be able to say that to yourself. because when it's really heavy in life and you don't have a place to go to internally, it becomes hard because you're working against your brain, and your brain is, all the corresponding parts of the brain are really about processing information. Mm-hmm. And when you're processing information that this could be life-threatening, it's really hard to override that to get into a state of fluidity as opposed to survival. Mm-hmm. So this is getting ahead of it, and it's externalizing it and being able to back it up, and then practice sets and reps, practice.
And then once you get really clear and you back it up, then are you repeating it to yourself? And if so, when?
Yeah, it's not that's too much like Stuart Smalley in Saturday Night Live. Like, gosh darn it, I am a tough man. It's like, I am a tough woman. No, it's not that. It is becoming familiar with those. So you write it down, and then how do you practice? Like the next day or that day, you might say, what would it be like if I was that person now? You know what? I am a tough MFer. Like, how would I do this next challenge I got coming up? And then now I'm asking you to do a little imagination, a little visualization with it as well. And you could practice it like you wake up in the morning and kind of read this list. It's a bit old. The science of that is not, I don't know, it feels like third gradish. But there's nothing wrong with having reminders and cues to familiarize yourself with those statements. Mm-hmm. What I'm suggesting is you externalize it, make it real, do that work, and then muse about what it's going to be like later in the day for you to back it up and be about it today. Mm-hmm. Like, how are you going to demonstrate? I know we're stuck on this thing of toughness, but it could be joy. And that's why some of the early work in the day, call it mental imagery, really that's the science of it, is like imagining yourself expressing that part of you in the natural events that are coming up in your day.
Beautiful.
Yeah, so it's simple, right?
Yep. Let's talk compete to create. So as I'm preparing for this and just catching myself up on everything you've got going on, I'm on your website. I'm looking into everything on your website, and then I start seeing these ads. You're trying to convert me, man. But you had this beautiful ad, and you're speaking at some event, and it said the line that stuck out to me was, "I need to be more, and the do more will flow from there." And I found it just resonated so much, because for so much of my life, I've been so achievement oriented. And I just keep thinking, if I just achieve this one more thing, I overcome this one more challenge, then maybe I'll be significant to my peers. Then maybe my dad will be proud of me, or whatever it may be. And I think so many people are like that, and mostly unconscious. They're not even aware that that's going on. Can you talk about this? What does that statement mean to you?
It is a foundational thought for me, is we need to be more, period, and let the doing flow from there. And so I think that this came from, the Industrial Revolution, those that survived the machining of automation, at that age or stage in our history, is that there's some tough people that came through that. And your family members and many of our existing kind of family trees from the Industrial Revolution came home, and they came home those nights and they said, "Hey, family, hey, honey, hey, whatever, machines are coming. I'll be damned if they're going to take my job." And so it was a forcing function that they needed to provide for their family to achieve more, mm-hmm. to do more, mm-hmm. because the automation was coming. And I'm oversimplifying, a very important kind of phase, generational phases in our life. But I think many of us, me included, at a younger age, bought hook, line, and sinker that model that you need to do more to be more. You need to achieve more to be more. And it's like, it's so fleeting, because I will tell you this, that one, I'll say something dramatic and I'll back it up, is that if you knew what I knew about what it's like to sustain excellence on the world stage and the type of struggles that world-class, and I mean tip of the arrow performers are working out, you might not want to ever push your kids into elite sport. One, the washout is incredible. Only a fraction of a percentage actually make it from high school to pros. Once you get to the pros, there's a lot of compromises that take place that are not celebrated and talked about. And those compromises are the deepest and most troubling is the compromise of one's mental health. Mm-hmm. And the reason it's an uninformed decision is because they are celebrated just for their doing. So much so in the NFL, we saw just a couple years back, this outrage from a fan base that was saying, hey, we don't care what you think about the American flag. Don't be disrespectful. Just play ball. Wow. So they become the world-class human doers. Mm-hmm. And what they are demonstrating right now is that suffering is unacceptable. And there's a solution. And that solution is I need to be more present, more grounded, more creative, more authentic, more expressive in my craft and in my words. And if I can be more, let's say grounded and present, then the doing will flow because I've invested ridiculous hours of refinement of skill on the doing, and it's time to flip the model. Mm. And that model is what I love about what we're talking about is it's 100% under everybody's control to examine and take a look like, am I being authentically me in every environment? Am I able to be present? Or do I get caught up in the narrative of what other people are thinking, or that I don't have internally what it takes to adjust to this situation either I'm thrusted in or I want to be in? High stakes environments, many of us want those. But pressure is really a response to fear. Fear of what? Fear of not being good enough. And what is really not being good enough for most people? It means not being accepted. And so when we really double click and examine that fear that is related to achievement, a way through that fear and the achievement golden handcuffs that many of us are led toward or are actually in, the freedom is reorientating how you experience yourself in every moment, the present moment, and that's available to everybody. And that's the beauty of training your mind to be in the present moment more often. And I'll stop because I'm on a soapbox, but that is my mission in life. That is my commitment to myself, my family, the science and craft and my community is to help others, myself first, right? Like help others learn how to condition their mind to live in the present moment more often, because that, Michael, is where high performance is expressed. It's also where wisdom is revealed.
Amen, brother. Dude, if you started the Church of Gervais, I would definitely attend. Keep it up, man. Keep it up. So
I appreciate it. Yeah, and I thank you for asking me about Easy Freight too. Like it's a life. That's what that business is really about.
So yeah, let's talk some more about that. So a few years ago, you start this company with Seattle Seahawks coach Pete Carroll. What's the elevator pitch? What do y'all do?
Just that. Like it is a thoughtful, science-informed, innovation-developed mental skills training program to help people understand how to organize their inner life and train their mind to be their very best, just like we use with elite athletes. Mm-hmm. And the second part is to help build the cultures that can help people do their very best work. So it's mindset training and culture building as a hand in glove solution, if you will, to help people reimagine what it means to be a human in modern times.
So I have a few questions about the work you're doing with some of these larger corporations and businesses. So you have a really unique perspective working so closely with these people as a psychologist. What's going on in the companies of the most successful companies, the highest performing entrepreneurs? What's going on in there, but in between their ears, that's different from people that are not as successful?
Yeah, I think that I wish I had a simple golden thread to say it's these four things and research will suggest that, or, it's not, we're not there yet. But I would like to just offer some observations that I have is when we talk about tip of the arrow, and I mean the rare 0.05 percenters, is that you probably don't want to hang out with them. You probably don't want them over for dinner. They are so committed. They are so relentless that they are practicing everywhere they go how to build the thing that they're trying to build or create the thing. So they practice on you. And that's very different than having a really wonderful, deep conversation with another person who is interested in you and who is curious and wants to learn and grow. I'm not saying they don't want to learn and grow, but they're so committed that it is, it's palpable. It's noticeable that mission in their life occupies more than just about everything. And I don't want to paint a bad picture. That's that 0.05 kind of rare ones.
Yeah.
Then
So wait,
can
we pause there for a second?
Yeah.
So is it even, what you're saying resonates so much. So is it even a good question to ask what they're doing and then to try to emulate what those people are doing? If my goal is to have a balanced, fulfilling life, and it's not to, my top priority is not to build a massive enterprise.
Yeah, it's a really important question. You use the word fulfilling. So Harvard did a 75-year longitudinal study on the science of fulfillment. And they basically followed lots of people around for a long time and said, okay, what did those who reported to be most fulfilled in life, what did they do that was different than everyone else? So if you're going to ask a question about the tip of the arrow, most extreme performers in the world, I'll give you a snapshot. And again, that snapshot is not fair to all of them. I think that if you look at people, let's say like Obama, President Obama, I think that he does not fit in that category. And I could go through a list of lots of people that don't fit in there, but the ones that are not necessarily public facing and celebratory, that are truly world leaders in their space, there's another group of people that I've been familiar with their experiences. So I have a small sliver of something. Okay. Sure. That being said, when you think about fulfillment, it's a very different question. So what that research suggested was that there's three things I think are really interesting. One is that those are the most fulfilled wrestled with the deep questions in life. That was one of the core characteristics of those who report being most fulfilled.
Wow.
They grokked with the difficult, hard questions. You're doing it right now. Do I ask about fulfillment? Am I more interested about fulfillment and joy? Or am I more interested in extreme performance? You got to wrestle with it. Right? Those conversations will shape how you think too. And so, the other variables were those that were most fulfilled, had meaningful relationships, and they also were purpose driven. That purpose in life.
Boom.
How about it? All three of them are available to every human on the planet.
So I knocked you off course. We were talking about what's going on in their heads or what habits that they have that are different from others.
Well, if we double click or expand open the 0.05 percenters to like the 10 percenters or 5 percenters, is that I will share my experience is that when I go work with a CEO of a Fortune 100 company and their executive team, right? So their direct reports and maybe one level down of vice presidents, is after I spend like, let's call it an hour or 8 hours with them. Those are the two. The 8-hour training is something that we do an in-person training at Compete to Create, and we do an 8-week online training as well. But when I spend time with those executives in the hallway, they'll tug on my shirt and they'll say, "Hey, like what you said resonated, and that practice like really speaks to me. How can we amplify this throughout the company?" Okay. Now, when we go a level down and we're doing like middle management, that they grab me in the hallway and they'll say, "Hey, that's amazing. Can you help me with my golf game? Do you think that could help me with my golf game?" Double click into the workforce, if you will, the manager workforce, is that they tug on the shirt in the hallway and they say, "That's amazing. Do you have any solutions on how I can get this to my kids?"
Wow.
Okay. So you're probably feeling the same thing I'm feeling too, which is like, wow, where do I want to fit? And I know I want to be about family and at the same time, be deeply invested in the refinement of a craft, like the executive team is, but they're occupied with different things. And again, it's not fair for me to say like this sweeping gross stroke, that all of them up there are thinking more about the business than the family. It's not fair. But as a hand grenade approach, it's a theme that pops up to answer your question.
That's fascinating. I have a friend who is a co-founder of a company in Austin. They were rated #1 place to work for their size company in the country. And he said to me recently that the way that they look at their culture is that all business problems have at least some, if not being like entirely an emotional component to them. So he says all business problems are emotional problems. What do you think of that?
Oh, I like it. I'm not sure it's like always that simple, but it's a good base framework to work from, which is the things that are difficult for us often are challenging a part of us that is less refined. And for many people, the unexamined, the psychologically unsophisticated or unrefined is that we don't have an understanding of how emotions work in guiding our thoughts and our words and our actions. And so for those that, like, you could flip that whole thing on its head and say the greatest solutions are from those who have emotional wellness. You know, it's like they're healthy and they can get into places that are like, I don't know, I'm making it up right now, but I agree with the thought in general that the weaker link for many people is the emotional experience. And thoughts and emotions are like this bang, bang, back and forth experience between the two. And they interface with our brain and body, and they interface with our environment. And so if we don't understand that ecosystem, our emotional ecosystem, and how it impacts our thoughts and our behaviors, it becomes a problem. And so business is not good at emotions. You know, it's not. It's better at tactics and strategies and objectives and goals. It's not about self-awareness as much as it could be. And look at this radical transformation we're in right now in the business place, that we're finally saying we need to value diversity. We need to value inclusion. We need to look at Microsoft, and I'm fortunate enough to have a front row seat there, that what they're doing is investing in the integrity of the human. And, you know, it's not lost that what we're actually doing at Seattle Seahawks is we've created a relationship-based approach to help deeply understand the other human, ourselves and other humans, so that we can be there for them to do the great things we want to do. So it's the being first, then the doing. Microsoft is doing the same thing, and they are a global leader and influencer right now in a humanity in culture. And so cool thought, man, about emotions and the power of them. Really cool thought.
What kind of opportunity is it for people that maybe they don't have a culture that puts much emphasis on emotions or direct conversations, et cetera? What kind of opportunity is there for people?
What do you mean? Like, what does that mean?
What is the possible positive impact? Like, why would anyone even care
about emotions
in business?
Most businesses are really clear about their external mission and less clear about how to resource the humans on the aim towards that mission. And the emotional component, if you want to go the distance, wait, hold on. What's the saying? If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go the distance, go together. Something like that. And so to do the incredibly difficult, hard, ambitious thing that a business is setting out to do requires people to do it together. And nobody does it alone. I've learned that from elite sport, both individual and team. Nobody does it alone. We need each other. It's a deep part of our brain stem and our mammalian brain, our emotional brain that is wired for connection. And it also holds up into quote unquote elite performance environments, is that nobody does it alone. So we need each other, and emotions are part of that binding and bonding to actually do something together. And so there are wolves, there's sheepdogs and sheep, you know, the old military metaphor. And nobody really likes the sheepdog until the wolves come around. And so if you want to help with investing in emotions, then we're helping people connect to a deeper purpose and meaning and an integrity in their own life and the value that they hold, and imagine the amplification that holds towards the bigger, more audacious, bigger vision in a company. And so we need each other to go the distance, and we need each other to be whole as best as we possibly can. So it's a beautiful question, dude. And, we're still in the world of human beings. And so emotions are right at the center of that experience. So we learned in elite sport long ago that if you value something, you can't make it extra. So, hey guys, we're going to come in and stretch because that's really important. And you're going to do your strength training later. Hey guys, we're going to have good conversations about, the games that we watched on, last week, but you can practice on your own later and read your playbook later. That's for you to do later. No, so I say that because business and sport, there's an opportunity to embed and fold in the things that you value inside of the rhythm of your workday. So if we know that they matter for the human experience, and people that are stressed, frustrated, fatigued, that they are going to produce less and they're going to feel less about themselves as they go the distance. Get that right. Get it right. Find the systems and resources to help people, flourish so they can go the distance together.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It helps. I've been grappling with this for a while in our business, and it seems like dealing with emotions, it helps us achieve more and create more in business, but it also helps us, in our career. We spend as much or more time in our careers than any other part of our lives. And it just allows us to enjoy it and to feel connected to the people that we're working with.
And there's so much purpose and meaning in that, and good research around purpose and meaning. Those that have purpose and meaning and are aligned with the mission of the company are better. They're just better. And so the science is pretty good there. So we can help people with that. And, this is where I've spent a lot of time thinking about how do we help people flourish in life and investing in their mind, the quality of their psychological framework, the quality of their thinking patterns, and how those thinking patterns impact relationships, how they impact the emotional well-being. All of that is trainable. And that's essentially what Microsoft helped us build at Compete to Create, is they were this beautiful partner early days to say, can we do it for our executive team? And can we do it for, eventually turned into like 30, 40,000 people.
Wow.
8 hours a person training their mind.
Wow.
And so, so that led us to this online training that has been, research informed, innovation built on, and durable. I'm stoked on it. Yeah, I'm stoked on it.
So if I'm reading your website correctly, it looks like you also offer some mindset training, mental training for individuals. Is that accurate? And if so, explain that a little bit.
Okay, yeah. So we went from enterprise and trying to work with those massive missions, and we said, okay, can we create the back end to support individuals that want to? Maybe it's you and 4 people from your team at whatever gym, or it's you and your wife, or whatever, or 3 of your friends, or you're by yourself. And so we just launched that late last year. And so we've got individuals that can sign up as well and go through a very similar experience that enterprise companies would go through. So how do you train your mind to be your very best? And so we called it Find Your Best. And so it's really that process of self-discovery and mental skills training to help you flourish in life. And super stoked on it. And I'd love to do a little. It's not cheap. It's not a cheap investment. There's a lot of intellectual property in there, and I'd love to create a little contest with you, where for your folks, and give away a course. If you want to fire something up, where
cool.
And
let's do that.
I'm happy to do that with you.
Cool.
And so let's do a little email campaign to get people to say why they want to train their mind, or like what not to make more money, not to the achievement, but like if they were to invest in their mind, what would they hope would be different in their life?
I love it. I love it, dude.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I'll follow up with that. Who is that best for?
I think any human that has not spent deep time investigating and formally training their mind. There's 3 things that we can train as humans. We can train our craft, we can train our body, and we can train our mind. And if we have not invested formally in training the mind, imagine the deep advantage moving forward. So whether you're incredibly successful or just starting to figure out what success looks like, the mind will be an important part of that variable. And so that's who it's for. I think it's for, all people. When I go through the course, like I wrote it and then filmed it and blah, blah, blah. And then after it was kind of launched and I went through it as not without a critical eye, but just kind of just to watch what we created. I was like, dang, that's yeah. Oh yeah, I got yeah. So I'm going through it it's even good for people that are trained in psychology. Mm-hmm. And so I'd just say, make it simple. If you haven't formally trained your mind, is a great place to start.
That's awesome, man. Let's wrap it up here. I've taken you far over our allotted time. I want to give a quick nod to your podcast. Guys, if this resonated with you at all, please check out Michael's show. It's called Finding Mastery. And there's also, is it Minutes on Mastery?
Yeah, we actually shut that down.
Oh, okay.
We did shut that down.
Yeah,
that was
fuck that one
3
then.
minutes or less. Yeah, forget about it. Finding Mastery. That's what's up. And then, you know what I'll say? I appreciate you driving people over there. And on Finding Mastery, I don't talk. I take your role, dude. I'm thinking and learning and and so, massive CEOs, massive sports, doers and whatever. And so I'm there learning just like you are in this one. So I appreciate you letting me, flap my lips a little bit here.
Of course, man. And one of my favorite things is just, it's such a unique podcast because of the way you're peeking under the hood into people's lives and how they became the high performing individuals, the amazing people that they are. Some of them are even a little therapy session-esque, right? They're revealing a lot about themselves. They're very vulnerable. And I've heard some people that I really look up to and admire that I've heard a lot of stuff from before, just being more open and real than I've ever heard them. And so I really appreciate that about your show.
Yeah, cool, man. Thank you. Yeah, it feels to me like we got to do better than tactics. There are no tricks, tips, hacks. Let's get under there and talk about the true insights and vulnerabilities and risk-taking experiences that led to the hardiness of the human that has done the extraordinary.
Right on, man. Thanks again for your time, brother.
Appreciate you, Michael. Take care.
Bye. This episode is also brought to you by Jumbo CBD. If you're not already on the CBD train, then I'm sure you've at least heard of it before, because many people thought in the beginning that this was just a legal way to get high. And unfortunately for some of you, you can't get high on CBD. You can try, but you can't get high on it. On the other hand, it can help you sleep better. It can reduce stress and anxiety. It can be huge for pain relief and reducing inflammation. Personally, I've had knee pain for about 5 years now, and I haven't been able to figure out a way to get rid of it. I haven't figured out the root cause. I've worked with PTs and chiropractors, and I just haven't been able to eradicate it. So I have used some pain relieving techniques, and this is one of them. I've used Jumbo's extra strength 200 milligram balm, and it absolutely does not completely take the pain away, but it makes it manageable. It allows me to get into a deeper squat. It allows me to walk around and just go about my daily activities without feeling much pain at all. And whether that's placebo or not, I really don't care, because I just don't feel like I'm in as much pain. I've also used their sprays, and there's a really subtle relaxing effect to the sprays. So that's pretty great. It's helpful for sleep and reduces a little bit of a feeling of tension in my chest, which I often call anxiety. It's great for athletes and recovery. And some specifics and what sets Jumbo apart is that they have 100% natural ingredients, full spectrum CBD sourced from Colorado and Oregon. They have CO2 extracted oils that are, I think, safer. They have therapeutic grade essential oils in a lot of their products, third-party lab tested, so it's legit. And they're one of the first CBD companies to post their lab results publicly. I also know the owners of this company very well. They're very close friends of mine, and I trust them deeply. Again, my favorite product of theirs is the 200 milligram extra strength balm. I've also used the sprays, but they also have drops and butters or ghee. I think ghee is like a butter type thing. So there's all sorts of different products. And they're offering you 15% off of anything in their store. And you can get access to that by going to jambocbd.com and use the code BRUTE in all caps. That's BRUTE in all caps. A couple more things. So a huge plus of their sprays and drops is that they use MCT oil. So since CBD is a fat soluble molecule, it binds with this oil and allows for much more rapid and effective absorption of the actual CBD. It also has essential oils that add flavor, and they bring their own proven health benefits as well. With the Muscle Bomb, since they use ghee as the base, again, ghee is like a butter type thing, the CBD is binding with the ghee fat, and it's able to be carried all the way to the bones. Ghee itself has amazing topical healing properties, and when CBD is added, the results can be pretty profound. So again, you can get access to this discount, 15% off of all of their products, by going to jambocbd.com and enter the code BRUTE, all caps, at checkout. Go get them.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode. Your journey towards better fitness continues. Head over to brutestrengthtraining.com to connect with Michael and his guests. Access links and resources mentioned in this episode, as well as bonus content exclusive to podcast listeners. That's brutestrengthtraining.com.